So we're very aware that many church communities are struggling not only with an aging and declining congregation, but also with the responsibility for maintaining a large uninsulated building. And this is obviously a huge burden when financial resources are limited. What the majority of churches are rich in is the centuries of stories to share about people, place, and possessions. So churches, amongst their many advantages, are museums as much as anything else. And so religion is just one of many themes that someone can learn about when visiting a church. There's architecture, nature, local, regional, and national events, art, music, the list goes on. Yet tourism in churches is generally quite an untapped market. Churches working alone or as part of a benefice or mission will have value to tourists whose wants and needs may vary. So, for example, my wife is fascinated by graves in old churchyards, whereas I'm often in awe when I'm stepping into a new church and my gaze is often sort of drawn up to these sort of magnificent ceilings. Others may have a passion for stained glass windows or what might be found amongst the long grass in God's acre. Churches appeal to people for many reasons, but for some, they're also a daunting place to visit, especially if you've never been to one before. Where parish churches do offer a visitor experience, we've often found them to be left wanting in one way or another. Many paper-based guided tours tend to be too highbrow and text-heavy, as the example on the right shows. They often focus too much on maybe the material makeup of monuments rather than the stories of the people they commemorate. Pop-up exhibition stands and panels often cover up the church fabric that people have come to see, and they usually give an untidy first impression. Signage and clutter is an issue for many churches. We've also found that many struggle with connectivity, both mobile and or Wi-Fi. And I actually know I was talking to a church not too long ago, and they couldn't get Wi-Fi because they didn't have a postal address. So there's all sorts of issues around these sorts of things. So these are all of the reasons why we designed InfoPoint, and it's a unique and game-changing self-guided digital tourism experience designed for churches, but also museums. And with the introduction of our solar-powered InfoPoint, the InfoPoint Solar, we have a growing market amongst those who manage nature reserves and other green spaces too. So on the right-hand side, you can see our InfoPoint Solar attached to a bird hide on a reserve in Somerset. And you might just be able to make out the InfoPoint tucked away on the top shelf of the image on the left-hand side. So how does it work? Well, if you imagine the World Wide Web, but on the scale roughly the size of a football pitch, that's sort of it, really. There's interactive tours, games, and other multimedia content. It is shared with visitors' mobile devices over InfoPoint's own localized Wi-Fi. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play our little promo video, which hopefully explains this a little bit more. And whilst it's me talking for some of it, it's also another voice, a couple of other voices to listen to as well. I'm going to put the closed captions on as well, just in case the sound doesn't come across as well. InfoPoint delivers site-specific multimedia content to any mobile device. It rewards visitors for visiting because the stories you share are only available to those who come to your site. Connecting to InfoPoint is a simple two-step process. Users can then browse video, audio, text, images, and interactives without the need for downloads, logins, or mobile data use. Adding and editing content is simple using the intuitive Placemaker content management system. This was designed by our team specifically for InfoPoint.
For much of the week, the church is unmanned. So we have visitors from both locally and around the world who come into the village, but maybe there's nobody to guide them to what may be of interest to them, or they may be looking for something and they're unable to find it quickly. And what InfoPoints allow people to do is come onto a system on their smartphone, which identifies things that people tend to come to look for within the church. One of the comments I've had is, oh, there's lots to find out. I'll have to come back another day to find out more.
InfoPoint is completely independent of the internet. It stores its own content and generates its own localized Wi-Fi network. It's a standalone plug-and-play system that uses less power than one low-energy light bulb, making it a great option for battery
and solar powered projects too.
One of the key issues for a wildlife reserve like Catcot is connectivity and power. The InfoPoint solution addresses both through its solar-powered panels and Wi-Fi access point. We are now in the position to leverage the use of visitors' mobile phones and other devices for them to access a range of rich media content.
Okay.
InfoPoint delivers
Wait a second.
site-specific multimedia content.
There we go. So in this instance, you don't actually have to visit infopoint.com because I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it. So during that video, you saw Gavin scrolling through some of the pages of content, and it is browsed like a website. And one of the most popular features we have is an interactive tour. So what I'm doing, I'm going to switch and actually show you a web version of our InfoPoint, some demo content. So hopefully, can you see that I've now switched to a different screen? Brilliant. Okay. So you can see here, it looks a bit like a website. You've got your title at your top. You've got your menu that slides in from the from the right-hand side. And then on this particular page, you've got an image gallery that you can scroll through images, and then you slide down. And before I show you one of our new features, the 3D models, I'm going to show you this, that you can actually have set up donations. You would put these buttons in the sort of appropriate place, like at the end of a tour when someone's had a good time. But what will happen is this is done through text giving, and it pre-populates a text for you, and then that donation is sent. I can talk a little bit more about that later on when we do the Q&A. But our latest feature, as I mentioned, is the 3D modeling. So this is the loading screen that you can see at the moment, and when the model appears, you can see you've got a number of hotspots, and I can tap on one of these hotspots and get a little bit of a label with a bit of information. And some of them have got a link on that I can tap on here, and that will give me more information about that particular part of the model. In this case, the potter's stamps, and we can read a little bit more about that. Returning back to the model, I can actually also play around with it as well. So I can really twist it around. Ooh, he says, there you go, and have a look inside, move it about, and click on the other labels as well. Some of the other nice features that we've got, I can illustrate in our children's tour. So all the tours that we have in here have an interactive map. I can either press the start button, or I can choose one of these numbered hotspots. So if I click a hotspot, this particular children's trail, the first one asks some questions that you tap this little arrow to reveal the answer. So you can sort of engage with the group before you find out what the answer is. On the second stop, we've got here a little quiz where you select the correct answer, or if you select the correct one or the incorrect one, it tells you. And then obviously selecting the correct one gives you the well done answer. We've also got things like jigsaw puzzles, so you can shuffle the image up, move them around, and if you are getting stuck, you can solve the picture. And likewise, we also have a word search. This one's based on the names of the people on the war memorial. So you come in here, have a look. So we've got a name there, Jones, and then it gets ticked off the list. We also have you can have all sorts of content on here. So you'll see we've got just scroll up, can't scroll up. Where are we? So you can have things like if I was to tap on one of these, you can see we've got just all sorts of content, images, text. And what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to jump into the content management system, the back end. So this is the front end. This is what the visitor sees. And if I now move the zoom bar's in the way, there we go. So bear with me a second. Just need to make my screen a bit wider. There we go. So when you first log into the content management system, you see a list of all your pages, and you can edit any one of these or add new ones as well. So there's a sort of full list here. I'm going to edit the page that we just looked at, which was seating. I'll jump straight to the content segment, and you can see you can add all these different types of content segments in any order and any number, so you have full flexibility. If I want to edit any one of these buttons or labels, I just hit the pencil button. But I'm going to add an audio file. So I come in here,
Hey.
I've only got one audio file uploaded. So I'll just hit that there, click add, and I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of the page where any new content is added to the bottom. And for the purpose of this little exercise, I'm going to jump this straight to the top. So it's up here at the top. I'm going to hit save. And now when I return back to the seating page and refresh it, there should be an audio file at the top, and then we can see that there. So it automatically updates as soon as you make changes. So you can be changing content regularly as you like to reflect what's going on at the church at that particular time. And then again, we can come back in and just delete any content block that we don't want and hit save. We've also got a number of other elements down the left-hand side. I won't go into them in detail, but you can upload content, you can edit your menus, you can even change the styles of your website. So this is quite a subtle palette, but you can click in here and you can just, from the color picker, choose any color that you want to represent your pages. So you have full control over that, and fonts as well. You can upload custom fonts.
Color coding.
You can create your word searches that you saw. You can also have analytics. So this is our demo page. This is what we just play around with, but it can give you data on the number of visitors there are, the number of sessions, etc., etc. And you can also interrogate the data for certain days or certain periods of time. You can also create evaluation forms and other forms. So you can ask surveys. So people that have used the info point, you can ask them to answer a few simple questions just to get some more qualitative data. You can also back up the content, so you've got a version saved in your computer. And the other one I wanted to mention here is multiple sites. So you could have more than one site if you wanted to. Now that could be to cater for 2 different types of audiences, or it could be to cater for 2 different languages as well. Or multiple languages, which the info point also supports. So that sort of gives you a flavor of the info point system. We've got lots of case studies on the website. The links at the bottom of the screen. You can also scan the QR code if you want to. And as I'll be sharing this presentation with you, you can sort of obviously do that in your leisure. So my voice is starting to go croaky. I'm going to now open the floor for any questions and comments. So let me just stop sharing so I can see you all. There. Okay, so I mean, I'll be interested in people's thoughts or any questions that you have.
Right, forgive my profound ignorance here, Dan. What you've got, it's like going onto Google in a way, isn't it? You're plugging in and I want to have a look at the font, or I want to have a look at the high altar, and you're reading the screen, and you've got these audio clips that you can put in. Now, you know that in some stately homes or buildings you go to, you've got the headphones set, you trog round and you hear it all on audio, and if you press a button you can get extra information. So you can have it in different layers, the short basic facts, the bigger facts, or there's a third one, Sir Ronald wore this armor in Agincourt, whatever. Now, how big is your audio clip? Is it mainly visual that you're reading text, because people's attention spans are not that long, or how long can your audio packages be? Can you do the whole thing on audio?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, you're absolutely right. So less is more. So you don't want your audio files to be too long, but the info point has 120 gigabytes of storage, which is a lot of Hollywood movies. So we always challenge our customers to try and fill up an info point. No one's done it yet. And if you did, we could always increase the memory. So you can upload thousands of audio files and videos and still not fill it up. But you're absolutely right. You'd want the audio clips to be short, whet the appetite, and encourage them then to listen to perhaps the next audio file or read the next bit of text.
You lead them on from one thing to the other.
That's exactly
If you want to go further, press this if you want to move on. We can do that.
That's exactly it, Joan. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great.
Thanks so much, Dan. That's been really interesting to hear about this, and heritage is something that we're all in our benefice really keen to promote better. We've got a really interesting heritage in our corner of the island, but the number of people have raised to me the issue of ongoing costs. So obviously your package supports people to obtain the equipment and perhaps put together the web materials, the materials that that people are going to be able to access. But if there are ongoing costs, then it would be good to hear about those.
Okay, I'm going to clarify one thing before that. In terms of, we mentioned, Joan, you mentioned about being like Google, and I think it's important to note that it's Google on a micro scale, so that it's only within a sort of given area. So we say it's sort of rewarding visitors for visiting, because they'll only find that information if they come here. In terms of ongoing cost, essentially there aren't any. So the way it works, we use a bit technical, but we use standard Wi-Fi protocols. So old devices now and devices in the future will all work on InfoPoint, because we're just using the same methods. And what we do from time to time, and the 3D models is a good example, is we do sometimes do updates to our software. Now we would charge for an update in that instance, but that's only if you want it. And the reason you want it is because there's a good return on an investment, either financially or just purely because you want to show off these 3D models you have, for example. But otherwise, there is no ongoing cost. It's a bit like when you buy an interpretation panel from a company and they put it in the ground, you wouldn't expect them to come back in a year's time and say, you need to pay us £100 for the rent or something like that. So yeah, it's a one-off capital cost. And the InfoPoint comes with a 5-year hardware warranty as well, just to sort of give you that peace of mind as well.
For the grant applications, who is the grant funder that you work with for them?
We generally work with the National Lottery, so we go for the small grants, the 3 to 10,000, because obviously they're focused nicely on heritage and they tie in. Now, the reason we're bringing our funding support to a close at the end of this month is because they're bringing out a new strategy that they'll launch early next year. But until we are 100% sure we know it all fits, we can't obviously promise it beyond there. So as I say, we're inviting expressions of interest still up until the end of the month. And that gives us another month to basically submit the application. So, for example, we have there's a place called Otford Palace, you might know, in Kent. It was once one of the biggest palaces in England, and very few people know about it now. I've got a meeting this afternoon to go through the final application with them to submit that. They only submitted the questionnaire the week before, so we can turn them around quite quickly. Obviously, based on the completeness of the questions that are filled in on the questionnaire.
Thank you.
How secure is it? Because obviously it's on a network, so you can actually get hacked or potentially.
It's a good question. We don't recommend there's any. We don't say put any personal data on there. So with the survey, I mentioned about the evaluation surveys, I would say don't ask people to leave their names and contact details and things like that. But otherwise, it's just the content that's on the InfoPoint, so the sort of the text, the images. So whilst there is, with anything, the chance to get hacked, it's very, very, very slight, and they're not really going to get anything from that either. In terms of the actual InfoPoint, I showed the image earlier on with it in the cupboard. The good thing is that InfoPoint doesn't need to be out on show. It can be in a cupboard, up on a wall plate. It's often a quite good place where it's out of reach. Quite a few of them are on top of the organ, again out of the way. So people sort of this sort of magic happens without them knowing where it's coming from.
And another question is, if we wanted one in the church and out in the churchyard, we've got a huge churchyard, which we're an eco church, so that would be ideal for us. Would we have to have 2 info points or just 1?
No, that's a very good question. So we basically with an info point, in general, most parish churches, the signal will fill out through the sort of the doors and windows to a point. Obviously, churches have got thick, damp walls, and that's not good for Wi-Fi signal. But it will come out. Now, it will depend on a number of factors, but where we position the info point would obviously have an impact on how much of the churchyard it covered. But what we can also do is have so we've got a church in St Andrews in Castle Combe, where they've got the info point at one end of the church, and they have one of our extenders at the other end, and that extends the signal up to the gate, which is what they wanted. So as people come through the gate, they can access it and connect to it. If we did need an extender out into the churchyard, I mentioned our solar powered one. So you wouldn't need a second info point. You would, depending on your power sources, it would either be an extender or a solar powered extender that might be required in that instance. But we'd need to come and have a look and sort of at first instance have a look on Google Maps, and then we can get a good idea if you were sort of just draw on the area that you'd like it covered, and then we can sort of work out from there. But until we get it in, and we can do some testing to show where the coverage would be.
Okay, brilliant.